Imagine for a moment you were a police officer, and that you're currently interrogating a man. A man that you believe has abducted a little boy. The man is not saying anything, and you know time for the boy is running out. What would you do? Let's talk about it. Magnus Gäfgen was born on April 11th, 1975 in Frankfurt, Germany. Frankfurt is one of Germany's richest towns because it hosts not only the headquarters of every bank of Germany, but also the German stock market. Magnus grew up in the middle class of Frankfurt. His parents both worked, and they raised Magnus with strong Catholic beliefs. When Magnus was in his late teens, he worked as a youth counselor. There, he met a boy. And that boy is going to be important later. This boy at some point ended his friendship with Magnus, and according to the boy and his mother, Magnus could not handle this rejection. Magnus finished high school in the Karl Schurz School in Frankfurt. The school is also going to be important later on. Instead of joining the military service, he decided to do communal service in a nursing home after he finished school. He then went to university, where he started to study law. At university, he tried to befriend the rich kids, and he even pretended to be rich himself. He used the retirement savings his dad was collecting for him to fool these people into thinking he was one of them. It was at this time when Magnus, well into his 20s, started a relationship with a 15-year-old girl. This went so far that he even used the rest of his retirement savings to finance her holiday in Florida. It was through this girl that he met another girl and her family. The family was called von Metzler. And the head of the family, Friedrich von Metzler, was very well known and a very rich banker in Frankfurt. Magnus even drove the kids of the family around one time. This sparing connection would prove fatal for the family. As I said, Magnus had used the rest of his money to buy his girlfriend a trip to Florida. His lawyer later said, Magnus was surrounded by people with black cards, and if they used them, they could get an elephant delivered the next day. But Magnus didn't have one of those magic cards, so he needed to get money elsewhere. And Magnus came up with a plan very fast. He decided to abduct Jacob von Metzler, the 11-year-old son of the Metzler family. His plan was to get ransom from the wealthy family. On the 27th of September 2002, he drove to his old school, the Karl Schurz School. It was also the school where young Jacob went to. He there lured Jacob first to his car, where he told him that his sister forgot her coat in Magnus's car, and that it's now in his apartment. Jacob then agreed to go with him to pick the jacket up. Once there, Magnus killed Jacob immediately. He never planned to give the boy back to his parents. He deemed it too risky. After all, Jacob would have easily identified him if he had let him go. Magnus wrapped tape around the 11-year-old's head and suffocated him. The terror Jacob must have felt in his last moments is unimaginable. But Magnus didn't care. After he killed the boy, he sent his parents a ransom note. He wanted 1 million euros for the safe return of Jacob. Once the parents got the letter, they immediately contacted the police, and the police was very worried. They thought it was an inexperienced perpetrator, and they also thought that he might do something to the boy in panic. Magnus, meanwhile, disposed of Jacob's body in the woods, close to a lake. The police placed the ransom money close to a streetcar stop, where Magnus picked it up. Unbeknownst to him, the police were trailing him. And they would do so for hours, and they became increasingly worried. Because Magnus wasn't going back to take care of the boy or release him. Instead, the police followed him, and he went to a car dealership where he ordered a new car. And then he drove to the airport where he booked another holiday for himself and his 15-year-old girlfriend. The police had had enough, and they arrested Magnus in the parking garage of the Frankfurt airport on the 30th of September, 3 days after Jacob had been abducted. For the police and the family, time was ticking. The police in the meantime had searched Magnus' apartment and knew the boy wasn't there. They also checked his parents' house, but Jacob wasn't there either. They knew that without Magnus' help, there was little to no chance that they would find Jacob, and time was running out. They didn't know if he was tied up somewhere or buried in a hole. But Magnus didn't say anything. Well, he did say something. Remember the boy I told you about? The one who ended the friendship with Magnus? Yes. Magnus accused that boy that he had been an accomplice. Of course, the police checked the boy and his house. And I can only imagine what this boy must have felt when an entire squad of police officers suddenly turned up on his front door. All because Magnus couldn't handle the rejection of the friendship. The pressure on the police was mounting. The Metzler family was very well known and liked in Frankfurt. All of Germany knew about this case, and the press knew that the perpetrator was caught. So everyone was waiting to see where Jacob was, but Magnus didn't tell them anything. So the president of the Frankfurt police, Wolfgang Daschner, ordered his detectives to threaten Magnus with violence. to get him to tell them where Jacob was. This is what would make this case notorious in Germany. Was it okay to threaten someone with violence to save a child's life? Or did that cross a line that should have never been crossed? But for the record, no harm was ever done to Magnus by the police officers. It just remained a threat. Apparently that was enough though, because Magnus told them where they would find Jacob. It's important to note that he didn't tell them that the boy was dead. The police officers had to find that out when they had to dig him up. The case went to court and Magnus was sentenced to 2 life sentences. For abduction, blackmail, the murder, and of course for accusing other people wrongfully. Unfortunately, life in Germany means no longer than 15 years. But a court very recently declared he wasn't fit to be let out, and they prolonged the sentence to 23 years. Now, he did try to get this overruled, because he was threatened with violence, but while a court gave him some compensation money, the sentence of life remained. He did have his name changed, so when he gets out of prison, no one will know what he did. And he will get out of prison. Soon. The police president did have to pay a large sum to the state, and he did lose his job, but to this day, many people agreed with what he did. So what do you think? Do the ends justify the means? Any parent would have done the same, but this was the police. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I hope to see you again in my next video.